Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. Car ton bras se porte le pays, il se porte la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is one addendum item this evening. The addition of item 15, a memorandum from the Economic Development Officer providing supplementary information regarding the report concerning the Scotiabank Convention Center sponsorship.
Your Worship, subject to Council direction, in respect of item number 5, that report, because of subsequent information, we will withdraw that report. Unless members of Council have any objection, we would withdraw this report at this time.
Is there any member of Council who has objection to withdrawal of the report? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess the question is, why are we withdrawing it?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Subsequent, we had we purchased back 5 years ago, or 6 years, the report is, I forget, the Port Colborne room in the Scotia Centre in Niagara Falls. It's $11,000 per year for marketing. The assumption was that it was going to provide tremendous opportunities for the television streams and the information at that center for good marketing for the city, being a world-class convention center. Based on the numbers, this room doesn't get used as much, and the report is pretty clear. It talks about 12,000 hits a year or something. We advised that we would be bringing this report, and the General Director, General Manager, Chief Administrative Officer, and Executive Officer of the Scotia Centre sent back and said, we'll make a change to try to maintain that. And it looks as though the number of hits, according to the supplementary information, is close to 200,000 per year, which would take our annual contribution and significantly provide tremendous opportunity for marketing for the city of Port Colborne. Subsequently, based on that, our review by our Economic Development Officer, Director of Planning and Development, it is our position of staff that it's money well invested at this point, and there is, because of the dichotomy of perspective, reports saying no, the further supplementary information saying yes. We're just simply requesting Council to remove it from the agenda, not being applicable at this point, unless Council has other direction that they want to give us. Our request, Your Worship, is to remove it on that basis.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Are there any other members that have any comments they wish to make? Mr. May?
I've decided to pull number 5, but I would like to discuss the number 5 when it comes to that point.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Bodney?
Mr. Mayor, I think whether we leave it there or pull it, we're still going to have a discussion, I think, on the other end of it, the amendment. So I'm okay either way. Whether we're going to have a discussion tonight on that, I'm sure, one way or the other. So I think whether it stays or goes, it may muddy the waters, but you know, I think we're going to have that We could simply pull that amendment and have the same discussion on that if that's the case.
Mr. Heil, any further comment?
Your worship, the intention would be to pull the report and the subsequent information, the addendum, to pull the whole thing. Decision was made. We see it right now in the estimate of the Economic Development Officer. There's great value and benefit in marketing. No sense having a municipality with all kinds of tremendous benefits and assets if it's not advertised. It's a budgeted amount and it provides tremendous opportunity. I don't mean to argue the report, but that's basically what that supplementary information, we would have pulled both of them. That would be my request, providing members of council don't have any objection to that.
Mr. Aquilino, have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In addition to the supplemental information, there is more supplemental information that came today.
Is it perhaps a little premature to deal with this evening then?
Through Mr. Mayor, as Mr. Heil has mentioned, there's additional information that you will see tonight that you never had before you. So it may be beneficial to bring all that information forward into one comprehensive report so council has the whole picture and package.
Councilor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess what I'm going to ask you then, Mr. Aquilino, because I think that we should address this as well as a council. So if you're telling me that you're going to get more information for us and have this back to us, in front of us for discussion at the next council meeting, will you do that? So then we can let it rest then tonight and get all the information that we need to make a very comprehensive, I guess, judgment on that.
Your worship, through you to Councilor Kenny, that is absolutely correct. More information in addition to the supplemental information, the addendum that was on the agenda this evening. We'll have that back to council the next meeting.
And I'm okay with that, Your Worship. Thank you.
Well, would you wish to make a motion to that effect?
Then,
Motion to withdraw?
then I will make a motion to withdraw item 5 and the subsequent addendum item to that item, which is item, 15, to withdraw that as well. To make sure, though, we have that report in front of us for the next council meeting.
June 8th,
Yeah, thank you.
pending review of additional information.
Just thinking something very worthy of discussion. And I think until we have all the information in front of us, we should wait till we get all the information, because if you have something in front of us that we don't have all the information on, we might regret that. So I think we should wait till we get that information.
Councilor Rodney?
I agree with Councilor Kenny, but I just want to hear from Mr. Heil. Reading between the lines, it almost seemed like this was a done deal, that it was rolled over or something. Do we still have a chance to say yay or nay to this? And what is our timeline for doing that?
Mr. Heil?
Your worship, this was an initiative that came forward through the Economic Development Officer. He's applauded for doing this, looking for ways to increase our marketing. This, and I didn't know about the new information today, we'll simply bring the report back with all of this information so that you can have a complete and thorough discussion. And if there's anything else, we'll get it all. So this is coming in bits and drips and drabs today. The information is very appropriate, and it's not cut and dried. Council on the 8th of June makes a determination that must pull the plug. The current report that you see outlines the circumstances and the effect and impact. You can make that decision on the 8th as well. There isn't a lot of difference in a 2-week or 3-week period. But hearing also that there's information today, which is important, should be at this table, and needs to also be considered. We will bring, Your Worship, rather than, I know you're working on a motion, but a simple withdrawal with a promise to bring back also works.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have to make a decision. Anyone else? Mr. Osh?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Bodner, just to answer your question, there's no foregone conclusions. We can cancel the contract essentially at any moment with written notification, and we have not yet paid for the following year, so there's no limitation.
Thank you, Mr. Osh. Well, it was my recommendation that we refer this to the next council meeting, June 8th, in order to have all the information before it, before we make an educated decision on this item. Is there a consensus? There is a motion. We have a mover, moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Desmarais. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. So, would I have a motion now to confirm the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Desmarais. All those in favor? Opposed? Can I see it again, please? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest this evening? There being none, we'll move on to determination of committee items requiring separate discussion, other than item number 5, which we've disposed of at this time. Yes, Councillor Danch. That's it? Item 2? Any other items? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Item 3,
Item 3,
7,
7,
14.
14. Any other items? Thank you. Could I have a motion approving committee items that don't require separate discussion? Councillor Main, Councillor Danch, call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have a presentation this evening from Joanne Ferroloci, our health service, Ferraccioni, I'm sorry. Joanne's our health services coordinator and has done a fine job, and she has some guests with her.
I certainly do. Mayor Maloney, members of council, staff, citizens, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce our Rural Medicine Week learners here from the University of Ottawa. This year's, after many, many years of hosting University of Ottawa, it once again promises to be a terrific week, thanks to our amazing community partners, but most of all our preceptors. We're very blessed here in Port Colborne to have many, many physicians and allied healthcare providers who really go out of their way to give these learners an amazing week. They're very early on in their medical career, so what they do now really is the building block to being a very successful physician. Many of them do decide to come back for a clinical placement, and we hope that they'll do the same, especially since 2 of the learners are from here in Niagara. We have Chris Russell, who's a native of Fonthill. We have Olivia Cook, who's a native of Fort Erie. And we have Julia Poveriana, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Probably massacred that. And we have Joshua Stanley, who's from Toronto. So I think they all have a little something to say to you all, but we're very grateful that Council supports this initiative. It's a very important initiative, but it is one, I need to note, that is also funded by the Rural Ontario Medicine Program. So it's a little bit of work on our part to give them a wonderful week, but at the same time it is very well supported by the Rural Ontario Medicine Program. So I'll turn it over to the learners.
Joanne, before you go,
Yes.
could you perhaps explain a little bit of what the program that they're doing this week?
Sure. They've just finished their first year of medical school. So it's mandatory within their curriculum that they do a week in a community that's deemed as rural. And based on our rurality index number, we are considered rural. So one of their choices can in fact be Port Colborne. We accept 4 students, and we had to turn away this year 80 students. who wanted to come to Port Colborne. We simply cannot accommodate 80 students. We can accommodate 4. So during the week, they spend a great deal of time rotating between the hospital, between the Urgent Care Center, Bridges Community Health Center, and our other healthcare clinics, Mapleview Medical Clinic and 97 Charlotte across the road. They also have lunch and learns, so we have many of our local physicians. We had Dr. Kuhn here today, it was a tremendous talk. We have Dr. Wilkes Whitehall coming tomorrow, and we have Dr. Bell coming Wednesday. But more importantly, they are spend a great deal of time in the community. We have a wonderful social calendar planned where we do some really fun things with them, and we have many dinners, and our community partners really step up to the plate there with providing us with some wonderful dining experiences right here in Port Colborne. We also go to Niagara Falls, and that is sponsored by the Regional Physician Recruitment Program, and we do some wine tasting, and then we go to the Brazilian Steakhouse. So we'd like to thank the Niagara Regional Physician Recruitment Program for sponsoring that for us.
That's good. Thank you, Joanne.
Sure.
Thanks. So as Joanne said, my name is Chris, and I was born and raised in Fonthill my entire life, and I had to travel far away to Ottawa for school, but I've always been excited to return home for the summers. And I'm really excited to not only have a great week doing some medical learning here in Port Colborne, but also to explore the community a bit more. We've already had great introductions to all sorts of different facilities, and as Joanne mentioned, we have tons of what seems to be fun things planned throughout the week, so I'm very excited to just become a bit more part of this community. And as she mentioned, the physicians seem great here so far, so I'm sure we're going to learn a lot.
Thank you. Olivia?
Hi, I'm Olivia Cook, and first of all, I'd just like to thank Bea and Joanne so much. They've gone above and beyond planning this week for us, so we're really fortunate to be here. I'm from Ridgeway. I went to Ridgeway High School, so I'm very familiar with Port Colborne. I had many dance recitals over at Lakeshore and many basketball tournaments at Port High. But even though I'm familiar with the community, it's a really great opportunity for us to get to see what it's like to practice medicine in a rural community. We're trained primarily in academic centers, and even in our residency, most of us end up in academic centers, which are located in big cities. So this is really a great opportunity for us, and we're really grateful and looking forward to a fantastic week. So thank you.
Thank you. Julia?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Julia Poverina. I'm originally coming from Kharkiv, Ukraine. It's one of the biggest cities in Ukraine. I have been to Canada for only about 5 years, and I've lived in Toronto until I moved to Ottawa, so I haven't had an opportunity to see smaller communities in Canada. So I'm really excited about it. And why I chose Port Colborne this year was because one of my Frosh leaders, Agnes, who was here last year, she left such a great feedback about the amazing experience she had here that I think most part of my class wanted to be here. We had to fill out the application on the night of New Year's Eve, and this was on my list for the new year. I really wanted to get to be here, and I'm really grateful for that, and I enjoy it very much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Joshua?
Thank you. So I'm Joshua Stanley, and like I said before, I'm from Toronto. So I've spent most of my life kind of growing up in a big city, but I've, despite enjoying my time there, I've always wanted to kind of experience what a smaller community is like. And also hearing from Agnes in our second year about how amazing her experience was in Port Colborne, both from the actual learning perspective and all the amazing physicians and the teaching that they offer, as well as the actual community experience and all the social events provided by Joanne and Bea. I thought I couldn't possibly not want to apply and come here. So I'm very fortunate and privileged to be able to come here, and so far we've had a fantastic experience, and I look forward to the rest of the week here.
Thank you, Joshua. Before you folks leave the podium, we just have a laptop. Go off in Ottawa when you go back.
All right.
The city's logo. No laptop is on it.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next year you'll know.
No more. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
At this time, I'd just like to do a introduction to our 2015 International Bocce Tournament winners. When I say international, I mean international. From April 30th to May 3rd of this year, members of this team, who are here this evening with us, met in King City, Ontario to play bocce with some of the best in the world. We're known for our bocce, especially the Special Olympians. I played against them and didn't fare very well. I can attest to that. There were 3 teams from Italy, 1 team from Malta, 1 team from Greece, and 19 other teams from across Canada, including there was a special Team Canada bocce team, and they were present as well. Because of the hard winter we had, all these athletes had not practiced together since the fall. But once they got to King City, they were allowed a 10-minute warm-up, 10 minutes before the first game. According to their coach, they had a bit of a shaky start against the team from Tilsonburg, but after a pep talk, they went on to beat Alberta 11-5 and Malta 10-2, clinching first place in the B pool. In the second round-robin playoffs, they beat the York Region Bocce Rollers to advance to the semifinal against a team from Italy. After beating them by a big margin, they advanced to the gold medal round. Team Canada was a tough opponent, but our Port Colborne athletes gave it everything they had and came out victorious. I would like to extend our congratulations to the athletes and thank their family, friends, and sponsors for their support of our fine Special Olympians. I would also like to thank the coaches, Italo and Anna Marie Rossi, who have been coaching our Special Olympic bocce players for the past 20 years, and obviously they've done an excellent job with that. I wonder if our team members can come forward, and I will provide you with a certificate, and I'll just read the first one, and this is to Eva Maria Bergeron. The City of Port Colborne recognizes your achievement as a member of the Port Colborne Special Olympics bocce team and champion of the Special Olympics 2015 tournament, which was held in King City from April 10th to May 3rd. On behalf of City Council and the citizens of Port Colborne, congratulations. You have made our city proud. There was a little bit of a tear there, and in a very proud moment, I say it's okay to cry. Next, we have Scott Schill. Come forward, Scott. Congratulations on behalf of the city. Very much appreciate your efforts. And you're there all too often. Well, not all too often, but Scott is an excellent athlete for the Special Olympians and participates in various sports. Next is Ron Favreau. Ronnie, can you come forward? Okay, we'll put it up. Show it to everybody. He's going to put that in the bocce club. Congratulations, Ron. Whoops. Next is Diane Gagnon. Diane. And, last but not least, Italo, can you come forward and bring your good wife with you? We won't ask you to speak, it's okay. Congratulations, Italo. Anna Maria, congratulations. The Bocce Club has an annual tournament, usually in June, And there are various teams made up of perhaps from city councils and various employers, and they submit a team. And but the good news is they spread out these experts amongst the rookies like City Hall. In any event, and Anna Maria is usually making the pasta, which we all enjoy afterwards. But, Ronnie, we've got a plaque that we would like you to take back to the Bocce Club as well, and to display that. And don't put that one in front. Thank you very much. Yes. Scott. That sounds like Mr. Saraceno. Thanks for the tip. We'll take care of that problem. Thanks for informing us. We'll be ready for him this year.
You'll put me on your team and I'll play on your team.
I'll draft you for sure, Roddy. Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay. We have two delegations this evening. One is Greg Workington, Executive Director, and Cheryl Moore, Family and Community Services Worker, and Michelle Benet-Tanner, Port Colborne Store Manager. The Salvation Army in Port Colborne is celebrating its 130th anniversary this Saturday on May 30th. And could you come forward and address us on the podium, please?
Good evening, Mayor Maloney, councillors, staff, and citizens. We want to thank you for providing this opportunity for us to come before you in person and invite you all to celebrate with us 130 years of the Salvation Army's presence in this wonderful city of Port Colborne. My name is Greg Workington. I'm Executive Director for the Salvation Army, covering all the activities of the Salvation Army in Fort Erie, Welland, Dunnville, and Port Colborne. And with me is Michelle Benet-Tanner. She is manager of the Salvation Army thrift store here in Port Colborne. Although it's been 130 years, many people are not aware of the origins and history of the Salvation Army. So we would like to briefly share with you this evening some history, then share some celebration stories of recent lives which have been transformed by our current work in the city.
Now, the Salvation Army began its work in Canada in 1882, just 15 years after Confederation, and quickly became a vital part of the spiritual and social service life of the country. Now, from the beginning, the Army in Canada adopted founder William Booth's philosophy that there is little point in preaching salvation to hungry people. And so the concept of soup and salvation took hold, later to be developed into the comprehensive social services programs the Salvation Army operates today, many of them in partnership with the government. Now, William Booth was a dissident Methodist minister who took his Wesleyan sensibilities and Christ's command to feed his sheep, to their logical conclusion. Starting as the Christian mission in the East End of London in 1865, it was renamed the Salvation Army in 1878 to reflect the increasingly military structure the movement had adopted. It was this that came to Canada just 4 years later, and the Army's growth as a church and social services agency since then has paralleled Canada's development as a nation. Now, the Salvation Army's status in Canada was actually entrenched in law in 1909 when Parliament passed an act giving the organization legal standing. Its governance to be conducted by the Governing Council of the Salvation Army in Canada, a situation that actually continues to this day.
The Salvation Army records show that the Salvation Army official work here in Port Colborne started when they opened a church on May 31st, 1885. Just 3 years after they began their work in Canada, which was barely 15 years after Port Colborne was incorporated. Although we have been unable to piece together the timeline of the Salvation Army's specific activities here in Port Colborne over those past 130 years, we still have a lot to celebrate.
Now, the Salvation Army founder, General William Booth, was actually a very visionary person who effected great change on an international scale. Booth created the Household Salvage Brigade, composed of a group of men and women responsible for collecting unwanted household items. Now, Booth's legacy lives on through the work of the Salvation Army and the recycling retail brilliance of the Salvation Army thrift stores. Now, today, the most visible activity of the Salvation Army in Port Colborne is the thrift store, which is spread over 2 storefronts, 48 and 50 Clarence Street, and the store is open 6 days a week. We were green before it was even trendy to be green, and we redirect over hundreds of pounds of household items that would otherwise see their way into our landfill. Lots of local artists and crafters purchase our products to upscale them. And in the summertime, local cottagers also redo their cottages with our merchandise and even spend time volunteering in our store. To many local residents, we are a daily destination where they find more than just great value for their money. They also find supportive staff with which they experience understanding and compassion. And all the profits made at the store are actually used to fund the Salvation Army's various social services programs run in the area, for which we have a lot to celebrate.
We never know what situation will bring a family into our Community and Family Services office, which is also located at 50 Clarence Street. Usually it is a need for groceries to help them stretch their budget to meet monthly expenses. However, we always keep in mind that we are in the community to help with emergency situations, and we watch for signs of a crisis that we can walk along and assist somebody with. An example of this was a young lady who came for help. She informed our worker that her family was moving that very day. However, when she went to the new landlord with her check, he refused to let them rent from him with no real explanation. So to assist this family, we found that Ontario Works would cover a hotel until they found another rental. Crisis seemed averted until later that day, our worker was driving home and she spotted the couple on bicycles loaded up with bedding and other belongings, with 2 children being pulled along in a wagon. Sure enough, they were riding out to the hotel. So our worker pulled alongside and met them at the hotel and proceeded to take the woman back to get the rest of her belongings. This couple needed encouragement, comfort, and a good meal. So she returned later with groceries and Kentucky Fried Chicken for supper. For a few minutes, life seemed a bit more doable. They lived in a hotel room for a few weeks and eventually got settled in a home, and today they are doing fine. So today we celebrate what seemed an impossible situation become hopeful because someone noticed and shared their journey for a time.
Now, we also celebrate opportunities we have each year to send children to a week-long camp, and that's actually overnight. Our 2 regional camps are recognized by the Ontario Camping Ministry, Jackson Point by Simcoe, and where the younger children enjoy a week of adventure, and the older children actually continue on to our Camp Newport in the Muskokas for an authentic outdoor camping experience. And even though we want to send new children every year, we do have some that have been able to go for several years in a row. The cost is minimal to the parents and is highly subsidized by the Salvation Army. And one young man began going to the camp at approximately 10 years of age and is still looking forward to continuing going this year at the age of 14. And even though he does have behavioral problems in school and on other life situations, he realizes that he must behave at camp or be sent home. Now, a couple of times he has actually been very close to being sent home from the camp, but last year he was so pleased with himself that he made it to the end of the week and had not been in trouble at all. And this year, he is extremely excited to return and see his camp friends and participate in the portaging activities. We hope that the values and friendship that influence his life while at camp will continue to strengthen him in his everyday life and challenges and his decisions. And a couple of other children actually hope to become camp counselors in the next year or so. They love the camp setting and feel valued for who they are. It is exciting to see the impact that camp actually has in the development of these youth into wonderful young adults.
We continue to celebrate the youth, recognizing the success of our anger management program called Red Cap. It is taught periodically throughout the year in several schools. The success of the program is seen in the teacher evaluations at the end of the 7-week program. In Port Colborne, the program has been taught in Oakwood, Steele Street, and DeWitt Carter Public Schools. Teachers allow us to teach during class time, which has been a real privilege. All students benefit from the tools, whether they display anger management difficulties or not. The curriculum addresses ways to manage our emotions, as well as to be aware of the other person's feelings. Students receive weekly workbook activities in a duotang that they can be shared later at home with their family. Our Red Cap teachers tell us the greatest reward is when a child sees them later and is excited to tell them how they were able to apply Red Cap to bring about a positive outcome in a recent situation.
And another celebration story is our Niagara Mobile Outreach Program, which operates year-round and serves the homeless and at risk of homelessness from Fort Erie to Grimsby. On Tuesday night, the truck is here in Port Colborne, providing those in need with a meal, emergency clothing such as hat and gloves, emergency sleeping supplies such as blankets and sleeping bags, and offers transportation via taxi to available shelters. Now, the Niagara Mobile Outreach Program also connects those in need to other supports for housing, income, life skills training, and other resources designed to help the homeless find stable accommodations. Through our mobile outreach program, we are able to reach individuals who do not feel actually very comfortable in visiting the regular social services programs in their offices, and therefore do not find out about the services available to them. For example, there is a Canadian Army veteran who visits the truck here in Port Colborne. Now, he took part in several tours of duties, and during one of those tours, he was actually injured. It was during one of his visits to our truck that we were able to direct him to seek help from the Veterans Affairs. Now, up until that point, he has only been focusing on help from the Legion. And one final story of celebration. There was an addict who became a regular visitor to our mobile outreach truck. He was in and out of rehab and struggled with various addictions. Now, on New Year's Eve, our worker gets a call that he had been kicked out of his apartment and he had actually found another place to live, but he would have no bed to sleep on. His challenge was that, of course, that being New Year's Eve, most services were closed. Well, our worker was able to bring a mattress to him and food for him to have for that evening. Now, we'd like to end by sharing 7 reasons why you should celebrate and support the Salvation Army.
1. The Salvation Army has a proven track record that goes back over 130 years in Canada. It is now one of the world's largest providers of social services.
And 2, the Port Colborne offers is part of something bigger. The Salvation Army is present in over 400 communities across Canada and more than 125 countries around the world, offering services in 175 different languages. When disaster strikes, the Army is often already there, living in the community, and is able to provide immediate aid and relief in the most culturally relevant way. It also means the Army will still be there long after the immediate needs have been met.
3rd, the Salvation Army has adopted Image Canada's Ethical Fundraising and Financial Accountability Code. In doing so, the Army undertakes to adhere to the standards set out in the code in its treatment of donors and the public, its fundraising practices and financial transparency, and to be accountable for doing so.
Now, the Salvation Army is managing its administrative and fundraising costs in a reasonable manner given the size and the scope of the organization, and in order to provide the best programs and services that deliver transformative outcomes for the people we serve.
Fifth, the social and community services programs focuses on nurturing the capacities, skills, and strengths of individuals rather than just giving them a handout.
Now, sixth, the Salvation Army helps one person at a time, believing each person is infinitely valuable and equally worthy.
And finally, all social and community services are equally available without discrimination.
So, please join us this Saturday, May 30th at 11 a.m. in our thrift store at 4850 Clarence Street for presentations, a 15-piece brass band, cake, fashion show, all to celebrate our 130th years of the Salvation Army in Port Colborne. Come and join us and enjoy the fun.
Thank you very much, Greg and Michelle, for a very extensive commentary on the Salvation Army and their history in Port Colborne. Does any member of council have a question or comment? I just want to make a couple comments. Number one, my first real exposure with the Salvation Army was on New Year's Eve, about 6 o'clock. The government of the day had decided to close the border to refugees, and of course there was a rush on the border, and so much so that the Immigration Canada could not process them all, and Immigration Canada brought in buses for these folks to be out in the plaza there, and the Salvation Army appeared with food and blankets for all. They were a huge truck, and I don't know where you would have stored these when they're not being used, but they supplied a very serious need that evening, again on New Year's Eve, like you've got your noisemakers there. And the second thing, at the last municipal election, I was over around Nickel Street there about 5:30 in the evening, and your outreach van was there, and distributing sandwiches and a beverage to those who were assembled there. And I took all that I could because I was hungry. I would have gotten in line but I chatted with your folks, but I did not take away a sandwich that perhaps deserved perhaps a more deserving home than my tummy. But I took an awful lot. Thank you very much for being here tonight, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Wonderful.
Great, thank you.
And we also have this evening Dr. Jack Lightstone, who is the president of Brock University. Jack, could you come forward, make a presentation on all the good things that are going on at Brock?
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. As many of you may realize, this past year we have been celebrating the 50th anniversary of Brock University. So if you will permit me, I would like to go over 50 years of our history tonight in 8 minutes.
I'll time it.
You know, Brock, back in the 1950s and 60s, citizens across Niagara invested time, energy, and their money to create a university for Niagara. It is truly a grassroots movement that brought us into being from all across the region. And thanks to their vision, our region today has an internationally recognized university that strengthens our host communities intellectually, culturally, socially, and economically. Brock opened its doors in September 1964, and since then has given thousands of Niagarans a post-secondary education. In 1999, a bit of fast-forwarding, we began to transform ourselves from a largely undergraduate teaching institution to a comprehensive institution, that is, one that offers both graduate and undergraduate programs and does research across a broad spectrum of areas. Today, 10% of our students are graduate students. That's 1,800 scholars and researchers doing their master's degrees and PhD degrees right here in Niagara. That change has brought huge benefits to Niagara, not the least of which is the size and complexity of new facilities needed for research and graduate programs. Having these world-class facilities are assets for all of Niagara in that they attract more and better students and scholars here to our region. For 15 years now, Brock has been one of the fastest growing universities in all of Ontario. In 1999, Brock had 10,900 students. By this year, that is this past fall, we have attained an enrollment of 18,824 students. That's a 72% growth rate in the past 15 years. That's outstripped the average growth rate of any Ontario university by more than 50%. When you combine the student population with our full-time employees and staff and faculty, our full-time, we have a population on campus of roughly 21,000 people. If you visit our campus today, you will find a bustling university that any region in any country of the world would love to have. Besides pursuing academic and research excellence, we are also committed to Niagara's own development, of making Niagara stronger. Consider some of the ways that Brock provides value to Niagara households, businesses, and municipalities. First, simply the economic impact. $200 million annually in payroll is paid to 5,000 full-time and part-time employees in the Niagara region. More than $10 million a year is dedicated to purchased services, much of it from regional suppliers. More than $13 million a year is paid out in repairs and maintenance, again, a lot to local suppliers. And nearly $10 million is paid out in local utilities and taxes. Brock attracts some of Ontario's top students to Niagara, often staying after graduation. 72% of our students come from outside the Niagara region, 40% from the GTA alone. And we would like to see more and more of our students staying in Niagara after graduation, and we would love to work with all types of community partners in making that a goal of our region and of the university. We also attract students from beyond Canada. We have almost 2,000 international students on our campus every year. They come from just about every inhabited continent on Earth. In terms of spending power, each year Brock students, that's apart from what we spend, Brock students spend about $366 million in the Niagara community. They put nearly $3 million a year into Niagara's public transit systems alone. We're also seeing signs of some of our international students wanting to stay here after graduation, and their families wanting to invest in the Niagara region. And we would like to work with our partners in ensuring that more of that happens as well. In the past decade alone, Brock and its supporters invested hundreds of millions of dollars into modern buildings that give Niagara a more valuable infrastructure. These include the Cairns Complex for Health and Bioscience Research, opened in 2012 at a cost and built at a cost of $120 million. Or the Marilyn I. Walker School of Fine and Performing Arts, opening this summer at a cost of $50 million. And just last month, the Ontario government pledged $10 million to expand Brock's business school, the Goodman School of Business. We're the only university in this past budget, the only university in Ontario to get a capital grant. And we are committed to making Niagara stronger, as I said. And we've put it in writing. Our strategic mandate agreement signed with the Ontario government clearly states that a priority for Brock is to work with and to strengthen our host communities in Niagara. And as you've just heard, we are doing just that, and we want to do more. And here are some examples of how Brock University partners with your community here in Port Colborne. Just last month, I visited Port Colborne's 2 high schools, where I presented new Brock Principals Awards. This is a new program introduced this year. At every high school in Niagara, 2 students each will receive $2,500 scholarships to help them attend Brock University. By the way, the selection criteria for these scholarships is very important. We asked the principals to pick 2 students who each satisfy 2 criteria. 1, academic excellence, and 2, a proven track record throughout their high school years of volunteering in the community, engaging in the community. We will take them into Brock, and we will continue that pattern. We will develop them intellectually, but we will also facilitate their continued engagement in the communities around Niagara. And we feel that through the combination of their intellectual development here in Niagara and continuing to facilitate their deep engagement in the Niagara community, that we will have a greater probability of keeping these young leaders in Niagara after graduation. In fact, therefore, we are investing through this program about $150,000 a year in keeping the best and brightest here in Niagara to be Niagara's leaders of tomorrow. Still on the topic of young people, in the past year, 235 students from Port Colborne schools have taken part in Brock's Youth University program, learning about subjects ranging from technology to leadership. Again, we feel it is important that Niagara youth see post-secondary education, ideally in Niagara, as part of their future. Brock students volunteer for many community outreach programs across Niagara, including here in Port Colborne. Do you know that of the 18,000 plus students that Brock has every year, over 6,000 of them have placements and volunteerships in the Niagara communities? This in addition to the 3,000 co-op placements that we have annually. Those co-op placements are paid internships in businesses, some of whom are in Niagara, and many more I think we would love to place in Niagara. And I think we should make it a concerted effort of Brock, the business community, and all of the municipalities to have as many co-op placements in Niagara as possible for our students. Why? Because national statistics show that upon graduation, 80% of students graduating from co-op programs will take permanent employment upon graduation with one of the companies with whom they have had a paid placement during their co-op education. If they are placed in Niagara, they are more likely to stay in Niagara. And I'll remind you, by the way, that Brock has one of the largest co-op operations in all of Ontario and the largest business co-op program in all of Canada. Brock initiatives include also Brock Care Days, which have seen students help paint classrooms, including here in Port, in the Port Cares Centre, just down the street from here. At the Brock's Goodman School of Business, MBA students work with community partners, applying theory and strategy to find solutions to real-life challenges of companies right here in Niagara. In fact, right here in Port Colborne, the Stoke Construction Company. Also at Goodman, the Next Gen Municipal Leadership Program is helping Port Colborne and other municipalities develop the next generation of managers, supervisors, and leaders for our municipalities. This popular program has helped train professionals, from planners to administrative staff to fire chiefs. Similarly, researchers at Brock's Niagara Community Observatory, our community think tank, study various challenges faced by Niagara's municipal governments, from poverty and literacy to binational regionalism. And there's another very important project that we're still developing. Brock is working with the Niagara region and government agencies on a program to offer complete tuition waivers for Niagara residents who receive Ontario Works Assistance. We're still working on the details of this program, but we feel that this is one of the ways of elevating people out of poverty by providing them with a post-secondary education, and there'll be more news on this to follow. Brock is a Niagara success story, and we're proud to partner with a full range of partners in Niagara, including its municipalities. We're here to stay. There's no other company that one can count on that will be here for the long run, that issues 5,000 T4s every year. Brock is here for the long haul, and we're here to stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Are there any comments or questions from members of council? Councilor Elliott?
Thank you very much. Through you to Dr. Lightstone, thank you for coming to Port Colborne tonight and giving your presentation. I'm a former resident of St. Catharines. It's my hometown. My mom and dad still live there. My son lives there. And I'm one that can remember when Brock had the connotation that, well, you go to Brock because you couldn't get in anywhere else and you had to stay home. And it has grown now to the point where it's basically unrecognizable from its early beginnings to what it is now. With the Cairns building, it really has transformed the whole campus. You touched on and repeated it numerous times in the retention of graduates to stay in Niagara. And that's the point that I wanted to make, is that Brock has now become an incubator for economic development in the Niagara region. And I guess I'll allude to maybe Kitchener-Waterloo with Waterloo itself and Laurier, where they have RIM development had the attraction to keep students in town. Graduates, after they had finished, had liked the area so much that they had set up roots and enjoyed the area and decided to set up and start up the business. Is there a way that Brock tracks the amount of graduates that stay in Niagara to start the businesses and develop, or is it something you will do going forward? And I like I said, I like the way that you had that theme running through your presentation, is that we are now keeping the people that we educate in Niagara, and I'll wait for your answer.
Well, since Brock tracks all of its alumni, all of its graduates, we know who stays in Niagara and who doesn't. But I think you're asking a slightly different question. Are we able to track graduates who are actually staying in Niagara in order to open businesses and employ others? And we are beginning to do so. But even more important, we're beginning to facilitate the process of them opening businesses in Niagara. So about 6 years ago now, we partnered with a number of other institutions, Niagara College, for example, the City of St. Catharines, the region, the Ontario government, to open a digital media incubator. It's not here in Port Colborne. It is in Niagara. It's in St. Catharines. It has graduated 18 companies already that have stayed in Niagara in the digital media area. We have begun to do the same in biotech and in other areas through the Cairns Health and Family Health Science and Bioscience Research Complex. And I mentioned co-op. One of the things that we've begun to do is not only try to place more of our co-op students in Niagara, but we've opened up just this past year a entrepreneurship co-op. In other words, instead of getting a paid placement in some business, whether it's in Niagara or elsewhere, for a work term, if you are a member of the entrepreneurship co-op, we will support you financially. In fact, our donors will support you financially to use your co-op placements to start businesses here in Niagara. So we are going to do more and more of this because we think over time, and it will take time, we can become the next Waterloo in the Niagara region. But it won't be built in a day. It's not a game of Hail Mary passes. It's a game of making yardage by inches, and that's how you have to do it.
Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much, Jack. There's no doubt that Brock has moved forward in leaps and bounds under your tenure, and I heard a little rumor that perhaps you may be stepping down from this position, but staying here at Brock, and we certainly wouldn't want to lose you with all your experience. And
Brock has a strong tradition, which I agree with, changing its leaders at least every 10 years. And renewal is good. It's good for the university, and it's good for the community. Sometimes, no matter, thank you for the kudos, but any institution will benefit from a fresh mind and fresh eyes looking at it. So I have one more year in my current position, and then I will revert to a faculty position at Brock University.
That's the bad news. The good news is that you're staying here in Niagara. And the renewal aspect we know from Mr. Heil here, who is also moving on after 8 years with our community as well. So we appreciate that. But if you're looking for a location for one of your satellite faculties. The City of Port Colborne is a good fit, and I'm sure Mr. Osh and the administration here could work with you and will work with you to see that happen.
We will happy to have talks with anyone you wish us to talk with.
Bring Brock to Port Colborne. Thank you again very much. Appreciate it. Now, if we could return to the agenda, I'll provide my mayor's report this evening. A number of items that I've done since the last meeting. We brought city greetings to the auxiliaries of the various regionally operated retirement homes here at Northland Point when they're having a joint meeting. I also attended a meeting of the One Foundation Niagara, fundraising for all of our facilities, health facilities in Niagara. I attended the opening ceremonies of the Lakeshore Catholic Ranking Cancer Run and brought greetings on behalf of the city. I attended a fair trade fundraiser on behalf of City Council. I spoke at a rededication ceremony for two members of the Doan family, Aaron Doan and Levi Doan, who were both United Empire loyalists and veterans of the War of 1812. And a granite plaque was placed on their grave in this rededication. I also attended the Safety Awareness Day at the Fire Hall, run by our volunteer firefighters, the Optimist Club, our Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, and numerous volunteers led by and headed by Councillor Desmarais and Councillor Kenny. And I said, Chief, I said volunteer fire. The Chief was there as well, but our regular guys were there. It was a wonderful attendance, roughly 96 registered, but there was certainly more than that. And the instruction that certainly our firefighters were giving were excellent. Good lessons to be learned. And so we thank all the volunteers, and especially our counselors, for their efforts. And I guess that's the end of my report. Our regional counselor is not here this evening, but I suppose I know this is the time to read. He did, there was a question from whom? You pulled that, I'm sorry, David. You pulled that, so we'll discuss that at that time. Thank you. Are there any other items from members of council or new business? Councillor Main, Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Kenny, Councillor Dan, Councillor Elliott. Okay, this is not the items, folks. This is just new items. Go ahead, Councillor Main, please.
Yeah, I have a few. I noticed that one of our employees, I don't know if it's the summer staff or picking up shopping carts out in front, take them back. There's shopping carts everywhere in Port Colborne, and especially here at City Hall, there's always 2 or 3 in the back and 2 or 3 in the front. And I asked several months ago about why we don't change the route for the bus. I mean, these people shop at Basics. They have to bring all their groceries over here to catch the bus to go to the east side or wherever they're going. Is it possible that the bus stop routes get changed that go to the grocery stores? Because these people don't have cars. And it's a struggle in the wintertime to push those carts all the way across the bridge or wherever they go with them. And it would be as simple as changing the bus, because they come here to catch the bus. And is that possible? I don't know what to ask. Okay, thank you, Peter. Through Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm part of one of the staff members on the Transit Advisory Committee, and this has been discussed at the advisory committee in the past, and we actually did change the route slightly about a year ago, where the bus used to just come around or come down from the hospital, and it would come down Elm and then cut over to City Hall. So what we actually had the bus route do is to continue down Elm to the stop sign. We're at the corner of the Basics, so that people wanted to get on or off at that point before it came to City Hall, they could do that. it alleviated a little bit, but I still think there's still people that, for whatever reason, tend to want to walk down to City Hall with the buggies. We did talk about with the transit. We did talk about them actually being able to swing in through Food Basics and actually stop there, but there's not enough. According to them, there's not enough room for safety reasons for them to actually come in, stop, let people on and off, and so on, and then actually get out of the parking lot again. Because now you're going into private property, so it's difficult for them to do that. So the solution at the time was just to create a stop, because they do have to stop at the stop sign at Food Basics, stop there, and if people want to get on or off there, they can get on or off there and leave their buggies then at the corner there. Because I know Food Basics, I know staff do bring them back, or we call Food Basics and they'll send their staff down and pick up the buggies periodically and bring them back. It's unfortunate, but I don't know how else we can actually stop them from bringing their buggies out this way, other than Food Basics doing something on their own at their point to stop people from actually taking them off their site.
Thank you, Peter. And I don't know who can answer this one. It's you, Mr. Mayor, and I think it's going to be Peter. And I think it probably has a lot to do with the garbage contact. I've noticed there's not a street in Port Colborne that doesn't have what I call curbside couches, mattresses, you name it, waiting for waiting to be picked up. And sometimes these people leave them out there. They don't have a clue of how to get rid of them. They think that first garbage truck that comes by is going to pick them up. It might be 2 weeks, it might be 3 weeks. It still sits there. And you know, we talk about tourism, we talk about a clean city, and I know that the city and the region didn't bring that couch or that mattress to that house. And why are we picking them up for? But why does that happen?
Mr. Lee?
Mr. Lee, thank you.
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Main. What people don't understand, it's more an education, is that the region of Niagara will come by and pick up those items, but people don't know that. It's not until we get the complaints that we then have to advise the region to come by and visit this area to pick up the waste. Perhaps we should got to do a better job ourselves of being more vigilant and educating the public that this service is available, and also with white goods as well. We'll come, just let them know where you are, give them notice, and they'll pick things up.
Mr. Lee, did you have anything else to add?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Main. Actually, the region is, it's a problem that they're having regional-wide. They've done a great deal of advertising, they've done handouts. It's in everybody's mailbox, and in those handouts it actually talks about white goods, the numbers to call, how to dispose of those. The region will come and pick them up if they're notified that they've been there. So as Mr. Aquilina has stated, it's just an education process that has to continue.
Mr. Mayor, are you finished with just those two items?
I have one more. And it's just a comment, to Mr. Mayor, to staff. I had the good fortune of going on Bayview and watching the water run there. And how well everything seems to be going, how well the people are working. But what topped it off was the water leak, I think was on Cedar, I think it's Cedar. And the work that those fellows do in water, I'd like to congratulate them, because there'd be no way that God could do work that I would do that kind of work. In patching up a line. I think it's a cast iron line on Cedar. It's been there for 50 years, apparently, and that's one patch. And I'm thinking, you know, we spend a lot of money on stuff that's above the ground, and if you don't go and look, I had the opportunity to look at it, and we're that shape below the 50 ground. And I really appreciate the fellows that, you know, they work hard at that. I mean, that's a job I really would. And thank you, and pass that on to the rest of the government.
I have a comment on two of those items. I wonder, is it possible to be a little more proactive with the mattresses and literally junk that's left at the curb and not picked up by our sanitation people? I wonder if city trucks go by and they note that something's been there for a week, or two. Can someone at our municipality call the region to have a pickup at that location? Would that cause more aggravation or liability potential?
Mr. Mayor, what we do in Bly Law Enforcement, we're proactive, and if we see something that we see that's there for more than 1 day, or 2 days, or 3 days, we do make the call, but more than not, we get the complaints that come in from the residents or some of the ward councilors. So we try to do our best, but we're not out there all the time. We rely on the eyes that are out there to assist on removing the items.
Well, if we could spread those eyes around that not only City Works, but our councilors, like Mr. Main, does a lot of driving around, that if you see these, we'll just report them to be picked up. And the other item on the transit, would it be possible for members of our transit committee or senior staff to meet with the transit authority and Food Basics to see whether we can reach a different situation where we can avoid all this litter of the carts. Yes, Mr. Sinette?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we actually have a Transit Advisory Committee meeting on Wednesday afternoon, so I will bring it to the committee.
Thank you. Madam Demaray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 4 items to speak to this evening. First, I would just like to announce that Habitat for Humanity Niagara is thrilled to be holding our first ever renovation build in Port Colborne, scheduled to start in the fall of 2015. The McLossick family have generously donated their family home to Habitat Niagara through generous support of the local community sponsors, partners, and volunteers. It's going to get a Habitat makeover and become a safe and decent home for hardworking, low-income Port Colborne family. And the kickoff for the campaign will start tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and we invite you to come out to 320 Bell Street and just have a look at the house and take part in the celebration. So I have the privilege of chairing this committee, and it's a true work of joy to be able to get this done and put the people together. We have a very active steering committee, and we're hoping to have great news as we progress. So that's tomorrow morning at 9. Another item I'd like to bring forward, just quickly to the shopping cart issue, because we have that. Ward 2 has been plagued with this forever, and I've gone to speak to the manager at Food Basics. And for Ward 2, it's not an issue of transit. That would make no difference, because they need to have their groceries come to their door, and the bus doesn't come near their door. So if those shopping carts go to the door, and then the children in the area, and sometimes teenagers in the area, take them and play with them further. So they're all over the place. Councillor Bissett and I have counted up to 10 shopping carts in one day, within just a few blocks. And I've gone in and talked to the manager about that. What he says is that when you see a shopping cart, call him, let him know where it is, and he'll send somebody out to pick it up. It's not a situation that works very well, and I really feel that we as a city should pressure Food Basics to do something else about it. There are other things that are other procedures that other grocery chains have. We might want to look at. The other is the issue of large item pickup. It's the ward councillor who calls in quite often with large items laying around. I just called in today about a home that has been collecting large items over the past 3 weeks. Every day there's more out there and more out there and more out there. I personally have called the region to report large items sitting out before. They won't take my call because I don't own the home. I'm not at that address. So they don't care. They want an itemized list from the person who lives at the address. The only way to get around that is as a ward councillor, for me to call Sherry Hansen and say, here's the problem, and then she reports it and it gets taken care of. So there's a lot of miscommunication, a lot of changes that should be made within that system. Because anybody should be able to call and say, here's what the problem is, there's the address, and here are the items, could you pick it up? That would make things much simpler. So those are those items. I also have some real concerns, and this is coming out of many calls and emails that I've received most in the last 2 weeks about cuts and restructuring to the hospital system, in particular threats to Welland Hospital. Okay, clearly what's happened in the past has left Port Colborne Hospital a shadow of its former self, and now Welland Hospital is facing a similar fate. The public wants help from their municipal leaders, and they've made that very clear. I'm sure there are many of us councillors here who have received those calls and emails. They're asking us to step up to the plate, have a plan of action, take a stand, make a statement of where we stand on this. And I think we owe them that. So what I would like to do is have this matter, this issue, put on our next agenda so that council can openly discuss what we can do as a council, what we should do, and then very clearly state what we will do. Just so that the message is out there, people know, and we're clear on what direction we're taking and what possibly could happen. Because I clearly don't have all the answers. But I'm sure if we all sit down and discuss it, we'll get a lot farther ahead than we are right now. So I'm requesting that that be on our next agenda.
Councillor Howell, you have a comment on that very issue.
Thank you. I don't think councillor.
Well, you will be correct. See you, Ohio.
Your worship, through you, the mayor has directed a report be brought. We're working closely right now with our health services coordinator. There is a draft we've reviewed today that needs some more work. Our health services coordinator is busy this week and then she's away for 2 weeks. And the report is intended to be redrafted and resorted and brought back. At the mayor's direction, we were going to take it to the health committee of the city to also add credence and value to that report and then advertise it for a discussion at the soonest council meeting would probably be the second meeting in June to go back in respect of primary health care services in the city of Port Colborne as it's impacted by Welland and Fort Erie and Dunnville and the NHS as a whole. All of that's in the cook, your worship, and we hope to be able to have that ready for you at the second meeting in June.
So we are moving forward with that. Things grind slowly, but we will be there.
But that's good. I thank you for that. I think the public's going to be very happy to hear this.
To decide which direction we will take.
That's wonderful. Okay, my next item is about, I was going to make an announcement and a report on Safety Awareness Day, but thank you, Mr. Mayor, for doing that. Most of that is done. I just want to say everyone had a very good time and there were lots of teaching moments. A lot of children got to find out what they would do in a home in case of a fire. There's some incredible tools that the fire department has that they're able to use. They learned a lot about bicycle safety. They talked to a lot of first responders. So they got to find out what the Niagara Regional's ATVs were like. We have some classic pictures of kids just with absolute joy on their faces pretending to be police officers. It was wonderful. A lot of good exposure. They learned a lot about safety in the community, and it was a really good day. So I think everyone had a good time. Thank you to our sponsors and to our wonderful volunteers. It makes it all happen. And in this year in particular, thank you so much to members of the fire department, because they made it happen. Everybody was really overloaded this year, and if it weren't for them, I don't know how we would have gotten the year done, but we did get it done and it was a great time. So I just wanted to make that report. One other thing, going to fire, and this is my last item, is I would ask the chief to please give us an update on what's happening to our fire truck that was caught in the fire. That's it.
Okay. Chief, are you prepared to give us an update? Thank you, Councillor Demery.
Through your worship, the council, very limited. The truck has been heavily damaged by the fire. It's in the hands of the insurer. We had hoped to get an answer back today. It didn't happen. There's a significant amount of work going on behind the scenes with regards to this particular damaged truck. I really don't have a lot more to say because it could turn into a bigger issue.
Thank you, Chief Cartwright. Any questions of Chief Cartwright that he can address? Councillor Kenny.
Just one, Mr. Mayor, and that's Chris Lee. Chris, I see the advanced green light that I've been asking for forever and ever at Melonby, at the Miller Bridge, up, but it ain't working. It's nice to have it up. It's great. I look like, there's my light that I've been after. but when is it actually going to be functioning so we can get those left-hand turns off Melody and cross that bridge quickly? Quickly.
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, I will check with the region as to the timing on when that will be operational. At this point, I would only be guessing, so I'll keep you informed.
Councillor Kenny, that's it? Thank you. Councillor Dash?
We'll pack a lunch. I got a bunch. First of all, we were talking about this garbage and stuff like that, and I've had good luck with the region over my 5+ years of being a councillor. And it's a simple phone number. It's 905-227-7771. And you call those guys for your large pickup items, mattresses, couches, and you don't have to leave them out in front of your houses for 2 to 3 weeks. One phone call does it all, and it's just that easy. And like I say, I've done it before. And you want an 800, it's 855-227-7771, and you'll probably get the same person answering the phone. So food for thought there. I think I'm going to pick on Chris more than anybody else tonight. Walking down my beloved Main Street there, just in front of Avondale, it was really neat. There's a hole in the sidewalk with what used to be a post there, and it's gone. And I think it's a no parking sign, but maybe somebody could look into that and see what's missing on Main Street there, close to Avondale, right on Main, on the south side of the street. It's pretty neat. I've been fortunate enough to do some business with the Manticore group over at Lakeshore Catholic, and driving my truck over there, going down Cloud Street, and I look at a sign that says Centennial Pool, turn to the left. I'm pretty sure the pool's gone. Maybe we could look into just blanking out to the Centennial Pool and leaving up the Lakeshore Catholic, because it's certainly down there. On a not funny note, I got a friend, customer, person that comes in my store, what do you call them, 527 Clarence, bought the home there a couple years ago, and having some real issues with people turning around in their lawn, backing in the driveway, urinating, some confrontations, of course. What they're looking for is maybe to get some barrier T-rails along that road allowance that's going up in front of what would be go over the train tracks, which we don't go over the train tracks, but they've had some issues. It's been ongoing. Neighbor across the street says the house has been egged 20 times in the last 36 months. That's enough for me to maybe want to try and do something for these people. So I don't know if we can maybe get something on the what we call the east side of the road there, and some barriers to stop the cars from going around. I say on the opposite side there are some T-rails and whatnot there. Maybe we could look into that and see what we can do for this person. Dan, you're looking at me like I'm from outer space, but no, it's going on. Anyways, that's my concerns for the people of Port Colborne at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Danch. Any comments from any of the directors on Mr. Danch's request?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danch. Actually, I'll have Public Works look at that intersection concern that you just mentioned. That's news to us, so we'll have a look at that. With regards to the Centennial Pool sign, I've actually already issued a work order, Public Works, to address that. So,
thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick issues. I had a conversation with Harry at the last Canal Days meeting last week. Brought up a couple issues at the marina. One being the trailer that now sits out front of the I can't think of the one. Ice cream stand. The ice box. Okay. I'm pretty sure in the site plan that trailer wasn't going to be out the front. Maybe you could discuss with us publicly when that trailer is going to be moved and why it's there in the first place.
Through your worship to Councillor Elliott. We had a discussion with the operator, and he's planning on moving it tomorrow. That was a date that he provided me last week when we discussed it, because it has been an ongoing scenario. There were some elements of the move to the back end that were tied to an electrical connection that he's trying to coordinate. He's had a cement pad put in the back, and everything else has been laid out so that he can make the move almost as seamlessly as possible. He had X number of days to do it. I won't say he's been procrastinating, but in fairness, it's good that there's always a constant reminder. Ultimately, there is a position that we can take, which is quite simply to close him down until he makes that move and authorize and move into the authorized position, and that's been clearly indicated to the owner, and bylaw enforcement has been made aware.
Thanks, Harry. And I'll pick on you one more time. I just had somebody at Saturday night who was at a function, and they were discussing, they held a seminar at Roselawn, and they were concerned that there was no availability of Wi-Fi for the seminar that they had. I was wondering if it's on your radar for installation in the facility?
Through your worship, Councillor, the simple answer is yes, we are. We've been dialoguing with IT for some time. I know Jim has been out on a couple of occasions working on looking at the possibility of installation. It is a preference for us to have that, and we've more or less given the go-ahead once we iron out some of the financial details, which we're not expecting to be too exorbitant as far as cost, but certainly want to know what exactly we're getting into in terms of public Wi-Fi, and or are we going to incorporate access to staff as well. I think the preference is the public. It also allows us to market the facility, but we're moving as quickly as we can with it, and it is a goal to have it in place sometime this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King.
We'll switch gears and we'll pick on Chris because he's the Ron tonight. So, two quick issues. Another issue down at the marina. Brought it up to Harry. You look at the front of the marina going in towards the main entrance down Cherries. For lack of a better term, looks like heck. Trees are overgrown, bushes are growing up. It looks terrible. We're going to invite people in with their boat to our city, and we're going to introduce them to a marina that, looks like crap. We get somebody down there trim the bushes. Not only around the front door, can't hardly see the Don Cherry sign. The trees are so tall. There's some that are overgrown against the building, but if you look to the left where the steel staircase is, there's weeds and bushes growing up over there too. The pavilion, some of the signs are fading, kind of looks like it needs a little bit of a paint job on it. I mean, you want to attract people in and you want people to stay. Make your facilities attractive, and right now it's not very attractive. So if we could get somebody down there ASAP and have them clean that up, be much appreciated. Second of all, not a very big issue. Somebody pointed out to me, but in the park right behind us, King George Park, it took me about 1 second to count the amount of picnic tables that are in there because there's one. Being downtown, a lot of people with the warmer weather like to bring a bag lunch and go outside and sit and eat. We've got a beautiful park that doesn't entertain people to come and sit outside. So if there is a chance that we could get another couple of picnic tables out there, it'd be really much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Anyone care to respond to Councillor Elliott's concerns?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott. I'll work with Harry on that to sort out the vegetation issues at the marina. And with regards to the picnic tables, that's a simple thing.
Thank you. Councillor Bodnar. You're okay? Good. Councillor Dance, you had a second thought.
I'm sorry, I forgot the most important part of my visit here tonight. Our Main Street BIA, maybe been a little bit delinquent here lately, but we haven't been. We've been getting together, and we've come up with a fantastic idea to go along with Canal Days this year, and we're calling it the Main Street Stakes at Lock 8 Downs. And what we're doing is promoting a sawhorse race for anyone that wants to register. We're charging $75 per horse and pusher because it's a push race with sawhorses. It would be on August the 1st, starting at 11 o'clock in the morning. And anyone's welcomed. We'd like teams. We've got prizes for best dressed, best looking horse, all kinds of things. And it's really to get some of the people down on the Main Street end of town during Canal Days because, of course, we're all loving this end of town. Registration forms are available. Got a few great places. You can go to my Home Hardware on Main Street. If you'd like to get a drink, you can go to the City Tavern. And if you'd like to talk to Mark Gilbo on the corner of Main and King, you can get it from there as well. Or you can check out the city's website. It's designed to be a entertaining late morning, early afternoon enjoyment. And we're looking for the right person to chair the event, and although we're going with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, we needed the voice. And we were talking to Sawyer there, but he can't come down and do anything for us, so we're getting Mr. Heil to be our MC for that event, and I'm sure it'll be entertaining and enjoyable for anyone that would like to come down. Yeah! Yeah! So if you'd like to get on your horse and ride, that's what we're doing. And come on down to Lockgate Park.
Thank you, Mr. Dan. At this point, there's no more interventions. I move on to the adoption of minutes of the 13th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole, dated May 11th, 2015. Do we have a mover and a seconder to adopt those minutes? Moved by Councillor Kenny, second by Councillor Desmarais. Any questions or comments? There being none, call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now, if we can move on to those items requiring further consideration. We have Frank Danton, item number 2. The Gateway Business Improvement Area, change of name.
Thank you. Oops, wrong button. That the Port Colborne Gateway Business Improvement Area, as defined by the boundaries described by bylaw 5466-63/10, being a bylaw to designate an improvement area as the Port Colborne Gateway Business Improvement Area pursuant to Section 204 of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001 C25, as amended, to be renamed the Main Street Business Improvement Area, that the clerk be directed to present the necessary bylaw for approval, and that the Port Colborne Gateway Business Improvement Area Board of Management be so advised. Really just wanted to bring this forward as information that we're just, yes, we are the Main Street Business Area and Business Improvement Area. We welcome the merchants on King Street and Elm Street and wherever we can get you from. We just want to go with a simple name, so we're just going back to the Main Street BIA, kind of like your downtown BIA. And we do have a meeting tomorrow night. A lot of them are at the country store. We generally hold them on Tuesdays, 7 o'clock. Any merchants are welcome. Stop on by. We keep them short, informative, and sociable, and you're all welcome to attend. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Elliott? Any questions or comments? Call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 3, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. The report CAO 2015-104, a matrix summarizing the work plan and program for the completion of the city's goals and strategies. You receive for information that staff pursue completion of the strategies as outlined, and that a regular status report be provided to council.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Kenny? Any comments? Questions? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to focus on one of the areas that personally for me is, I think, one of the more important ones, economic development. And strategies 4 and 5, update and revise as needed the city's economic development master plan with continued emphasis on business retention and expansion, including engaging the business and industrial community where possible and practical. And 5 is variety of retail, build strong partnerships with the business improvement areas and Chamber of Commerce. And it's really nice that this comes up tonight on the same night that Frank's got his downtown or his Main Street BIA on the agenda as well. Where it says work plan focus on the on strategy 4, it's blank, and on 5 it says agreements for maintenance and operations, meet with groups and develop a plan for partnerships. What I'd really like to see and propose is that we develop either a committee of council to work with the stakeholders in the city, whether that be a committee that meets on a monthly or quarterly basis and takes into account all the sectors, commercial, industrial, retail, educational sectors. I think it's time we get the stakeholders back to the table, to have some input from them, to listen to what they need, what they want in this city. And it may be completely different than the the area of focus that we're on right now. But if we're going to develop a retention and expansion plan, we need to listen to people that are in our city. We need to listen to the people that have expanded already or are thinking about expanding. We need to listen to the retailers, the commercial people, the industrials, on where they see the next expansion taking place, what they need from us to assist them in it, and how we're going to move that forward. We did at one time, in a previous time, have a committee that was called the PECTDC, which stood for the Port Colborne Economic Tourism and Development Corporation. And it was a corporation that was managed by the city. I don't know if you want to take the same tact as that or the same structure as that. I'd even suggest even if we had an ad hoc committee that just met periodically through the year at the call of the chair if we wanted to appoint such. But it is really important that we get stakeholders back to the table. In my dealings with a lot of these sectors, they feel isolated. They feel like the city's not listening to them or not providing opportunity for them to speak. And it really is a fault of us by not opening our ears and not having an avenue for them to present their concerns. And I think we really need to get back to this. I think we need to put out a call for people that want to come even as private citizens and be part of this and see where we're going. Where do we fall short? Where do we excel at? I've seen it through a couple of the downtown BIA meetings where some of the silos are breaking down, where we've had cross meetings and we've had people from actually the Main Street BIA with their stakes race that they're going to have come and want to meet with the BIA because they wanted to see how our meetings went. We had friends of Roselawn come and make a presentation to the downtown BIA. That's the first time anybody from Roselawn's ever set foot in a BIA meeting. So there's people that want to work and develop synergies in the city. And I think right now is the time that we've got to grab onto that and run with it. We've got to listen to what our community wants, especially the business community. Small business provides more employment than anything else throughout Canada, and we've got to listen to them. There are some fairly big industries in this city that manage to grow on their own because of who they are and the product that they produce. They excel at the products. I'll give an example. A friend of mine works for Austin. They basically don't have salespeople because their product sells itself. They're so good at what they do that they don't have to sell it. People come to them. They've got major stakeholders or international companies that come to them that want them to make their product. Yes, they're owned by an American outfit, but the product is made in Port Colborne, and I think we'd be amazed at what they produce. When I hear him talk about the stuff that goes out their door and the value of it, it absolutely blows me away, and I don't think everybody in town knows exactly what they do. So it'd be nice to promote that. Thurston Machine, Jung Buns Lauer, PC Drop Forge. If I missed anybody on the larger side, Pinty's. I mean, you don't hear anything about Pinty's, and they're out in the concession too, but they were founded in town. So we've got to listen to these people. We've got to bring them to the table, get their input before we can move forward. I think we take a look around and we listen to what is going on through the region. I mean, the big push from the region right now is the GO train, but I'm not hearing anything outside of that. What's the region working on besides the GO train? I mean, that may be a couple of years down the road, but what are we working on immediately for municipalities? What can we do to help ourselves? Let's not wait for somebody else to come and deliver something. Let's go and get it. Where's our focus? So I'd like to put that out. I'd like to either develop a committee of council, and it doesn't have to be immediate, but it should be put into play as quickly as possible. Let's get the parameters. Let's get the terms of reference down, or it's an ad hoc committee, whichever way you'd like to go. But I'd really like to see us focus on input from stakeholders in town, whichever way we go. And Evan, if you'd like to make comment to that, please do.
Ask Mr. Heil to comment. Mr. Heil.
Your Worship, this schedule that we provide the council is the first run by city staff to move this along. It's got to get done. There's a lot of initiative. This is a huge initiative. These strategies, goals, and objectives of the city. The intention, Your Worship, was to provide this as the taste, and now to add some substance to it. And in all cases, if members of council believe, even from a personal perspective, want to add, Your Worship, to this information, the staff that are assigned this work will gladly take all the input, and it will be coming back for updates and regular information to members of council. Those kinds of ideas about public input and participation on that will get folded into this. We'll make a note right now, the Economic Development Officer will make a note, and it will become part of it. This is the first go-around by the people assigned the tasks to supervise and coordinate that particular item or feature in the council's overall goals and objectives. So from that perspective, Your Worship, if there are anything else in here that members of council want today or can think of in 2 weeks to add to this, the purpose of assigning this the way it is to provide opportunity for ideas and input so the staff can address anything and everything that comes up. This is a public document. It will hopefully focus on all the comments that were made at the presentations at Council's first go-around of its initial plan, or in the first go-around of the strategic plan exercise, and create a much broader, guideline for an end product to be described. This is the start. So at this point, Your Worship, those issues in respect of public participation will be included in the matrix.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Mr. Osher, do you have any comment in response to Mr. Elliott's request?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Elliott. Certainly having an advisory committee, whether it's ad hoc or a standing committee, it's a model that works extremely well in other communities. It's just a matter of finding the correct, best-fitting model and developing a strong, clear mandate for that committee. And I'd be more than happy to work to find that model and bring it to council in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Osh. Are there any other councillors who have a comment? There being none, we'll move on to item number 7. Mr. Elliott, that's yours as well? Actually, perhaps we have the motion to proceed. Is there a seconder for that motion? Mr. Main, any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 7, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. The council informed the Niagara Catholic District School Board of its objection to the proposed education development charge being put into effect prior to September 8, 2016, being the expiry date of the City of Port Colborne's development charge exemption for residential development, and that cost to administer their collection and payment be addressed prior to implementation.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Kenny, comments, questions? There being none?
Yeah.
Councillor Elliott, you have a comment.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. I guess through you to Dan, the $245 development charge, or whatever you want to call it, expansion charge, only is applicable to new builds, to net new builds after this is implemented by the NDCBS, is that right? And the Catholic District School, yeah, NCDSB.
Jack Williams?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor, that's correct. Every time there's a new residential unit being built, the development charge would then be collected.
Okay. And just to clarify it, it's any new build in the defined area, and it doesn't have to be the municipality in which they're going to build a new school. It could be any area in which a new school is going to be built that's under Niagara Catholic District School Board's purview.
Through Mr. Mayor, this development charge is for the region of Niagara. So you'll note in the report there are 2 different counties, but the development charge right now, it doesn't say that if money's collected here, it has to be paid over or used over there. There's a lot of comments that have been received throughout all of the neighboring regions, neighboring municipalities that have concerns. So a lot of the information has not been brought forward to the actual trustees that need to make a decision. I know that other municipalities have wrote reports and have made comments, and there's a lot of questions that they have. This report only touches on some of the issues that have been raised. Other municipalities have questions about, well, what about CIP areas? They're exempt. Does the Catholic Organ also honor that? They're collecting all of the information that has been submitted to them from each municipality to then be brought forward and report to them. But to say that this is an easy task, there's a lot of municipalities that are also objecting to what they are doing for different reasons. Okay. But I know one of the municipalities, and they would like to have it specific. Like you see where they're proposing to build these 2 new schools. Those 2 areas that the schools are going to be built in, the 2 counties, have the development charges that are paid go to where those schools are going to be built. So if, for example, if the development charge is collected in Port Colborne, we're saying that, well, we shouldn't have to then pay that to be used in Lincoln, where they're planning to build an expansion one day. But they're not addressing that, but that is a comment that has been made elsewhere as well. So there's a lot of information that they have to sift through before it gets to their trustees.
Billy?
Thank you, Dan. And I fully support your opinion, and also the recommendation here that we inform them of our objection. It's ambiguous on where you're going to build, and you're going to tax everybody on new builds regardless. It may not be an imposition to some people, but $245 is a heck of a chunk of change to support a school that the draw area is not even around us. I find that kind of hard to believe that you're going to tax somebody and they gain no benefit from it. If it was in our area, that's great. But when they don't even take into consideration the cost to implement it in a municipality, to take the money, to pass it along, staff time, staff costs, and it's kind of like we're just going to absorb that. Maybe not. So I would, this definitely has to go back to them, rewrite it, define it more before it comes back to us for comment on it. But right now, wholeheartedly support the recommendation about our objection.
Anyone else? Councillor Kenny?
Are objecting to this. So other municipalities are objecting as well. What does the objection accomplish? Is there a jurisdiction over us that they can do whatever they think they can? That's what I think.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Kenny, all of the comments, it's the same as a planning application. There's comments that are received, it then goes to council. In this case, all the comments received will go to the trustees, because they're the ones that are going to be making the decision on this. They have their background information report, they have the consultant that is involved in this and provide the development charge bylaw. But that also gives an opportunity for each individual municipality that has submitted comments, if they want to appeal the development charges bylaw, that then allows them to do so. You're absolutely correct. It may fall on deaf ears, but it's something that they should consider and take seriously if all municipalities have some sort of objection. They just can't ignore it. We're not alone in our comments, but hopefully they listen.
CEO Ohio?
Your Worship, further to the objection, it has merit. It doesn't say we're going to object till the end, but just as long as there's a window open to provide the impetus for economic development for the next 2 years. That's the key. The fact is that this city has taken every step it can to try to make the climate, I guess, favorable for growth, residential housing. This flies in the face of it. While there isn't an objection to a charge in the future, during this 2-year hiatus, the approval of this works against this council's decision in respect of economic growth. That was one of the main reasons that the planning department has recommended that this should not proceed at least until the city's vacation, so to speak, from development charges relaxes in 2016 September.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have a couple things just to add to what Dan has mentioned. I was at our area treasurers meeting on Friday, and the consultant for the
Larry Catholic District School Board and a couple other members were at our meeting to do their presentation to all the area treasurers. And basically we asked the specific question of, are they taking into consideration the type of situation we have here in Port Colborne, where we have a waiving of development charges for the next 2 years, and also CIPs that waive certain development charges and so on. And their answer was no, they hadn't taken those into consideration, but they would take it back to the trustees.
Thank you, Mr. Sinet. Any other comments or questions? Perhaps a question to you, Mr. Aquilina, as the treasurers have met and do meet from time to time throughout the region. Do the planners do so as well, and should this be on your next agenda?
Mr. Mayor, in fact, after the area treasurers in the morning, they met with the area planners on the Friday. And a lot of the comments that were made, it wasn't a very warm and fuzzy meeting. Let me trust a lot of the comments that were made, directed to the consultant and the school board, it wasn't very friendly. So we meet once a month.
Would your organization formally go on the record as opposing this proposal?
Each director that is there, through their council, provides the comments that ultimately will go to the Catholic board. And I know the town of Fort Erie has done that, but as a group collectively, I think there's more impetus that comes from the local council, as opposed to our area planners group.
But perhaps maybe you could draft a report on this further, and you've got the sentiment of council here. I think we should address this rather aggressively as well. And do we anticipate that we might get a similar request or suggestion from the public board?
Mr. Mayor, that has been discussed, but it hasn't come forward yet. I know right now under the Education Act, the Catholic board, they have the power to actually implement this. I'm not sure about the district school board, but I have to guess Education Act does not cross jurisdictional boundaries. If you're a school, you're a school, as long as there's a board there. I would assume in the future it probably will. But important for this is that this is only for land purchases. Doesn't go towards the construction. It's only for the purchase of property. And so a lot of the two areas that they're looking to build a school, we know it's in Niagara Falls. Two of them they want to do in Niagara Falls, and one's in Lincoln Grimsby. Issue in Lincoln Grimsby, a lot of the land is frozen under the greenbelt. So a lot of what they want to do, it may be more difficult than they realize, because land out there is very limited.
Thank you for pointing that out. Mr. Howell, do you have a comment?
I've all been responding.
Good. We're good to move on to the next point? Oh. We have the recommendation moved and seconded. Do we have to call for the question now? All those in favor? Carried. Item number 14, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. That the resolution received from the town of Fort Erie re taxi service in the town of Fort Erie requesting the Police Services Board to amend bylaw 350-2014, being a bylaw to license, regulate, and govern vehicles for hire, including taxi cabs, be received for information, and that the restrictions on only one license be explained through an ask of Regional Councillor David Barrett, who sits on the Niagara Regional Police Services Board.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Main? Councillor Barrett is not with us today. He has supplied a letter which I believe is in your package. He indicates in his letter as the board chair has spoken with Mayor Reddicoff from Fort Erie on this issue, and the issue has been referred to the police board's public consultation session on June 29th to determine the cause of the issues and if there are any potential solutions. So is there any comment? Do we wish to move forward with this or wait until the matter appears before the Police Service Board? David?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll put this out because I'm not exactly sure who can even answer this. At the end of it, it says now, therefore, this council resolves, which I'm assuming is the town of Fort Erie, and it says that the Police Services Board consider amending bylaw 350-2014A to require all taxi owners to provide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, provide service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as a condition of license, and B, to require hearing for every new and every renewal of a taxi owner's license, and that area municipalities should be given notice of the hearing and afforded an opportunity to comment. Is that widespread throughout all of Niagara? Is that something that they're asking the Police Services Board to change so that it covers every taxi company across Niagara, that everywhere has to provide 24/7 service? That's the part that I didn't understand.
CEO Heil has a comment.
Your Worship, the request is specifically from Fort Erie. They're asking at least a change in Fort Erie, but could be across the entire region. The fact is that the Police Commission is responsible for licensing taxi cabs. I have no idea why the Niagara Regional Police Commission would have that responsibility. It should be in the hands of the local council, or at least the regional council. This meeting on the 29th is going to solve that. And the question posed at Fort Erie, a comment about changing that bylaw, it's not specific enough to say it's just Fort Erie or it's just the region. It's just to the Police Commission, and I would presume, Your Worship, we will follow up, though, once we find out. I did speak to the regional councillor today about the matter, after he had forwarded this through, and we're going to be bringing it back for a more vigorous discussion once we find out, Your Worship, what happens on the 29th. We'll be asking, Regional Councillor Barrett will be asking specifically of the Police Commission about further details as the Commission speaks for itself.
Would this be Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that was my concern, is whether it's just if it's sole based on what Fort Erie is looking for, or if this is going to be something that's broad based across the region of Niagara. The biggest issue I have is you're telling a company how they have to operate their business. If there's no business to run 24/7, I don't want to tell you, you got to provide a service that you make your one call at 2 o'clock in the morning and that's it for the whole night. Where does government get off telling somebody how to run their business? I can license you and tell you how you have to operate within the confines of it, but to tell you that you have to provide 24/7 service, I'm not exactly sure I want to go to that point. So I guess if we could, are we going to accept this as just correspondence, or do you want to, can we defer it? Or
well, it's an outside resolution. We might want to defer this to
after the meeting on June 29th?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll defer it till after then, and we'll see what happens at the Police Services Board meeting.
There is a motion. Is there a seconder for that motion? All those in favor? I thought it was John May. All those in favor? Carried. That concludes the consideration of items requiring additional consideration. Are there any notices of motion from any councillors? There being none, before I adjourn, I just want to emphasize the upcoming meetings of the Council of the Whole and General Council, Monday, June 8th, Committee of the Whole, Monday, June 22nd, Committee of the Whole and Whole Council, Monday, July 13th, Committee of the Whole and Council, Monday, July 27th, 2015, Committee of the Whole and Council, Monday, August 10th, 2015, Committee of the Whole and Council, and Monday, August 24th, 2015, Committee of the Whole and Council, all of these meetings starting at 6:30 p.m. That would appear that we've run through the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Dance, seconded by Councillor Kenny. All those in favor? Carried. Now, are we ready to move on to Council of the Whole or regular council? Somebody needs to break. We turn to our new agenda of the regular council meeting. Call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, are there any addendum items?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two addendum items that I'd like to note: the withdrawal of item 5 and item 15 from your agenda concerning the Scotiabank Convention Center.
Thank you. We have confirmation of the agenda as indicated by the clerk. The deletion of items. Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Councillor Demery. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest? There being none, move on to adoption of minutes. First will be minutes of the 14th meeting, special of council on April 20th, 2015. Perhaps we can do these in block. Minutes of the 15th meeting, regular of council on April 27th, 2015. Minutes of the 16th meeting, special of council on May 4th, 2015. And minutes of the 17th meeting, regular of council on May 11th, 2015. All those in favor? Mover and seconder. Councilor Bodner? Councilor May? Seconder? All those in favor? Carried. Now, determination of council items requiring separate discussion. There being none, I'll call for adoption of the council items not requiring separate discussion. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councilor Dan, seconded by Councilor Bodner. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. We have a few proclamations. First is dealing with English as a second language week. Is whereas Ontario has been the destination of choice for many immigrants who have added to the diversity of the province by bringing their culture, customs, and language, even as they endeavor to acquire the ability to communicate in English. And whereas the community of English as a second language learners are represented in all aspects of society, there are students, participants in workplace training programs, researchers and subjects, volunteers and workers, employees and business owners, laborers and professionals, neighbors and friends. And whereas the professional organization Teachers of English as a Second Language Ontario hosts a conference in Toronto each year to maintain and expand the skills and abilities of its members. Now therefore I, Mayor John Maloney, proclaim November 8th to 14th, 2015 as English as a Second Language Week in the city of Port Colborne. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councilor Desmarais moved it, second by Councilor Bodner. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The second proclamation reads as follows, whereas Parks and Recreation Month is an annual province-wide celebration, and whereas it is important to increase awareness about the benefits and values of parks and recreation, and whereas we encourage citizens to become more active and engaged in their communities in health and well-being, and whereas everyone has the right to quality, accessible, and inclusive parks and recreation services in their community, and whereas we encourage citizens of all ages to be educated on the importance of recreation and its health, social, and environmental benefits, and whereas we wish to showcase the parks, facilities, programs, and services of our city and the contribution that Parks and Recreation has made to our community. Now therefore I, Mayor John Maloney, do hereby proclaim the month of June 2015 Parks and Recreation Month in the city of Port Colborne and encourage all citizens to participate and be active every day. Is there a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Bodner. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Madam Clerk, we have minutes of board commissions and committees, the minutes of the Senior Citizen Advisory Council meeting of January 29th, 2015, and February 19th, 2015, and March 19th, 2015. Do we have a motion to accept or approve those minutes? Councilor Kenny, seconded by Councilor Desmarais. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Second one is the minutes of the Port Colborne Public Library Board meeting of March 3rd, 2015. I have a motion to accept those minutes. Moved by Councilor Kenny, seconded by Councilor Main. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Are there any notices of motion? Yes, Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to give notice of motion that I will bring forward at the next meeting with regards to the development of a ad hoc committee with regards to item 4 in the strategic plan. That was item 3 in the minutes, and dealing with economic development strategy in the city of Port Colborne, and I will bring that forward to the next meeting.
Thank you. Councillor May? No comment? Okay. You done? You don't have to move that. No, it's just Madam Clerk, we have a confirmatory bylaw? Oh, I skipped over. Introduction and consideration of passage of bylaws. Madam Clerk, we have bylaws for 3 meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaws be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 62426815 being a bylaw to authorize entering the borrowing of sum of $2,755,000 on the issuance of debentures. Bylaw 62436915 being a bylaw to authorize certain new capital works for the City of Port Colborne, to authorize the submission of an application to the Ontario Infrastructure Lands Corporation, to authorize temporary borrowing to meet expenditures, and to authorize long-term borrowing through the issuance of debentures by the Regional Municipality of Niagara. Bylaw 62447015 being a bylaw to change the name of the Port Colborne Gateway Business Improvement Area to the Main Street Business Improvement Area. And finally, bylaw 62457115 being a bylaw to appoint a chief administrative officer for the City of Port Colborne.
If there are no objections, we'll deal with those bylaws in bulk. No objections? All those in favor? Moved by Councillor Dan, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now the confirmatory bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaw be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 62467215 being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of May 25, 2015.
All those in mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Kenny, second by Councillor Main. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Wish to move into closed session. We need a motion to do that. That council do not proceed in closed session in order to address the following matters. Chief Administrative Officer, Human Resources Division Report 2015-99 regarding a human resource matter pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392D, labor relations or employee negotiations. The second item is correspondence from Sarah Premy, solicitor with the firm of Sullivan Mahoney, conveying legal advice respecting confidentiality pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. So, mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Main, second by Councillor Desmarais. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.